Data and Platform Women in Technology group, virtual group. We can be found on our website at dataplatformwit.com, Twitter at data_wit, and Blue Sky at data-wit. Don't ask us why we have two different ones, but that's the way the world works in social media. You can't get everything the same. It's not fun if everything's the same and easy to remember, but it's close to the same, so it's easy to find, right? But that's the easiest way to find us and connect with us. We're probably more active on Blue Sky than Twitter because there's, Twitter's turned into a dumpster fire. But at any rate, upcoming sessions next month, we've got From Chaos to Order, from Taming Your Fabric Architecture, which sounds like probably something that really needs to be done because Fabric just seems to be exploding everywhere. From Christina, who's part of our WIT leadership now. We scheduled her way before she was part of the leadership team. And then September 9th, we got Leading as an Introvert by Tiffany Portis. I don't know why I said the name that way. But at any rate, I'm terrible at pronouncing names, but I don't know why I said it that way. But I did. But today we got Migrating SQL Server to Azure Managed Instance using DMS and LRS by Gilda. And I'm going to turn it over to her now. And don't worry, Gilda, we will cut off all the yammering we did at the beginning. When we of the recording. So now it's over to you. Do you want me to interrupt you with questions throughout, or
yes,
chat,
please.
or interrupt you want to hold them to the end?
Yes, please interrupt me because I feel like we can interact, and that's the way to learn, man.
Just wanted to check. Some people want to wait to the end. Some want interruptions. So
yeah, I love interruptions. A little bit about me. My name is Gilda Alvarez. I hold a degree in Management Information System and Computer Science from the University of Central Florida, and I have over 2 decades of experience in enterprise technology, database optimization, implementation, high availability. I have my company. I do also help the Latinas in tech. I do migrations to the cloud every day, my bread and butter. Okay, and a little bit about what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about an introduction, an overview. We're going to prepare for a test migration. We're going to go through the process. I'm going to go a little bit over many other things that are going to happen because sometimes demos are so great, but things happen to get it that way. So I want to make sure that I align everybody in what is the prerequisites of many of these things. Okay. And yeah. So what do we use here? What tools are we going to use here? Azure Data Migration Service is what we're going to use in order to do this. Now, things are changing and things are evolving. I personally use Azure Data Studio to do my migrations today, but do not fall in love with Azure Data Studios because February of next year, it'll be gone. But it's okay, because what's replacing that, it is exactly the same thing as what Azure Data Studio does, but it'll be in the cloud, in your portal. So it'll be exactly the same things. You just, once I show you this way, you're going to be fine, okay? We're going to go from my server on-prem to an Azure Managed Instance, okay? And we're going to do it in minimal downtime. I find it that many companies are, using this so that it's not, so they don't have any outages. They're able to migrate very critical environments. That's why I did this presentation, because I wanted, anybody can do a backup and restore, right? So anybody can take a backup, put in a storage account, do a restore, and here you are, you're in the cloud. But what I see the demand is, how do we do this in a way that it doesn't impact any of our users? It's transparent. I've been doing for over 20 years technologies like log shipping. We are familiar with all the migration mechanisms we used in the past, but here we're going, in the cloud, we're like completely limited to certain things. So using DMS and using LRS, it gives you an eye of what we used to do and the same features and possibilities that we had when we were doing migrations on-prem. So LRS and log replay is the same technology, just built for the cloud. Okay. If you have any questions, you're welcome to ask. Raise your hand. All right. If not, I'm moving to the next slide. All right. So what do we need to download? Azure Data Studio. On your on-prem environment, you can download Azure Data Studio and then add the Azure SQL Migration extension. Okay. I'll show you where it is. You just have to add it. What do we need for roles? Let's say you're creating your managed instance in the cloud. You're going to need to be a contributor. Okay. Also, you're going to need to have your reader role on your Azure resource group. Of course, owner or contributor on your subscription. And we can also do custom roles if for some reason you have very specific strict rules in your environment. We can customize as much as we can. I try to give those permissions very quick because that's what allows us to do our migrations quicker. But I was working with other clients, Walmart, UPS, all these giant clients that they have very strict rules. Okay. All right. And you should be ready to go with permissions, right? So there's two mechanisms we're going to use. You can use the online migration or the offline migration. Okay, we're going to do an online migration this time because everybody can do offlines. It's the same thing. You can do a backup and restore, or you can use DMS to do an offline migration. It's a lot simpler if you do it this way because it integrates everything together. I'll show you what I mean. When I say everything together, if you look at this diagram here, right, you can see here's your server, right? Here's where your, your files. When you use the Azure storage account to do your backups from here to here, you no longer have to do the self-hosted integration runtime. I try to avoid it, but I'll show you what it is. And basically, we're going to be able to do straight backups to the storage account. And from here, we're using DMS to restore it in whatever environment you want, right? Next. So we're going to do a demo. I don't know if you've created a managed instance in the past. We're going to run through one really quick just to give you an idea. Okay. We're going to create a SQL Managed Instance here. Let's go. We're going to create. By the way, you can actually create a test environment for free, but it's not something I recommend for production. We're going to give it a name. And we're going to make it the cheapest version we have because, as you can see, it's not cheap. And now we can use SQL and Microsoft Entra as authentication. Make sure you put in the right password, not like me. You can also add your user, your Entra user here, okay? I strongly recommend. And put in the right password, not like me. And that's about it. Be honest with you. This is, making sure that you're using the virtual network where your storage account is located, making sure, if you have, if you don't have, you can do public, but you don't have to do public. You can do virtual connection. And that's it. Give me 1 second. All right. So right, so now we're creating. It's gonna take a little bit of time. I'm not gonna lie to you. It does, it does take a little bit of time. So we're gonna We're going to fast forward to the end here. But always keep in mind when you're working with managed instance, you know, there's engine power that is happening in the back. So I need you to be patient. And whenever you stop, when you start it takes time. So it's a little heavy. That's what I call it. Okay. Now, this is our environment on-prem. So we have an on-prem environment. I usually use Ola scripts to do this, and I feel more comfortable with that, but you can always use your own jobs. So we're gonna back up our full and transaction log backups straight to your storage account. I didn't create the storage account. I'm sure anybody can create a storage account. Inside of that storage account, you're gonna create a container. And it's going to be for your backups. When Ola does the backups of these databases, it creates a folder for each of the database. It is critical that each folder is created for each database in order for DMS to work. We don't just back up files to a storage account and hope this thing works. It has to have an individualized folder with all with the data file and the transaction log files, et cetera, okay? So what I'm going to show you here is how I use Ola for my backups. Now, when you create a container in the cloud, it probably has two methods of connecting, right? You can use SaaS, you can use access key. Either way, we have to create a credential on your on-prem environment to connect to your storage account. Usually, when you right-click and back up through the GUI, you can connect through Entra and it generates the credential automatically into the database for you. Okay, so this has already happened. That's why I'm able to do this. Okay. And so what I go in is I look at the script that Ola does, for example, for the full system database. When you look at the backups, it shows you the parameters that we're using. And usually backs up to disk, right? But here, we're going to change the directory from null to URL. Okay. And this is how we do it. This is for the system. We're not going to back up the system. We're going to go to the full. So the full, we're going to use the URL of the storage account that we have in the cloud. And we're going to change that directory that had null, and it'll show URL. And it's going to point that to the container where the backups are going to go. Okay. Once that's set up, you can just go ahead and run your backups. Okay. So you just right click, start your backups there. Okay. Okay, so now I think this is stopped. Sorry. Apologize. So we're gonna go to properties. All right. So this is it. I was just showing you how to use that OLS script. Here, this is the container where the backups are going, right? So we have all our backups, our transaction logs, and this is the share access token that I'm using. And I'm gonna add list, I'm gonna add read so that you can see them, right? And write to them. So okay. Any questions? Are we good? Can you see me?
Looks good.
Everybody's okay.
Looks good. No one's asking.
I thought I lost everybody here. Okay.
No, I figured I'd not let you sit in complete silence.
All right. So the next step after you set up your backups go into that storage account. After you have your managed instance created, is to create the data migration service. And it's very simple. You just select the source, select the target, data migration service, and that's it. Believe it or not, that is the data migration service. You put in the same resource, please. Let's work with the same resource group for your managed instance and your storage account, everything in one place, if possible. We call it Gilda DMS. And that's it. Here is the magic. Believe it or not, this might look simple, but what's happening in the back is extremely, extremely smart. So we're done with DMS service. Now, what's going to happen in the future is DMS is going to be what this is for you through the Azure Data Studio. This is Azure Data Studio. As you can see, we have been using Azure Data Studio for a while now. We've gotten used to, some of us, to it, but don't fall in love with it. Like I said, we are going to get rid of this eventually. Right, so here, Azure Data Studio, we have the Azure SQL Migration extension, okay? And this is what does the magic for us. This is actually going to be your DMS full GUI in the cloud when we migrate to the cloud completely. Eventually, Arc is going to take place for migrating managed instance, anything, and we are going to have to get used to that. So eventually, my new revised version of migration to the cloud using DMS and LRS is going to be through Arc. But in the meantime, let's use Azure Data Studio.
Should we be seeing Azure Data Studio at this point?
Yes, you should.
I'm still seeing the portal, the DMS setup.
Oh, how weird. Thanks for saying. Thanks for.
Problem.
Please, let me stop sharing and share again. You see?
Yes, thanks.
Awesome. Okay, so here's Azure Data Studio. This is my on-prem database. This is the extension that I uploaded for this specific task. I'm going to go migrate to SQL. I'm going to start a new session. So this is going to generate an assessment, right? I only have one database I'm going to migrate here. And what the assessment does, it actually goes inside the engine, inside the server, and it's going to tell me if it's a candidate to go pass or it can only go as a virtual machine. Now, it also collects SKU information. So SKU recommendation will depend on when you run it, how long you run it, because eventually it's going to give you a estimate based on how much computing power is used, right? So you can collect this information as well. Here we know that I'm migrating to MI and everything is good. So here I'm going to select Azure SQL MI. And it says it's good to go. If there would be any issues, findings, it'll show right here. And it'll show me as either warnings or issues, blockers, things. There are things that we can work around and things that we just cannot work around. And it will take a lot longer. So it definitely is not a candidate. So you have to understand. All right. So here we're going to choose, of course, your directory, your location, your resource group. There we go. Your online and offline. We're going to go online this time, right? And we're going to point to the Azure storage container as our tool. We're going to use the resource group that we've been using, RG Gilda, and the DMS service. Okay. So the magic that's taking effect here is based on that DMS service. In the back, the DMS service has connected, right, through here to your on-prem database, dynamic and history of your backups. So it knows when the last full backup ran, when your transaction log is running, at what point of, it has all the details, and it connects to your managed instance. Here, you're gonna tell DMS exactly where you want the backups, or where do you want to point your backup dumps location. So resource group RG, this is where the physical files are located. But it knows when was the last one it ran, it knows everything. And voila, you start the migration. So everything is running in the back. You can just relax, go home, wait until the next day when all your databases are migrated. You have to understand that you're doing an online, right? What does it mean by an online? Everything is happening to that storage account when it comes to the transaction logs, right? Are immediately copied to your MI instance. So until I pretty much say, this is the last thing I'm ready to move, everything is happening in the back, right? So it's restoring, everything is restoring. It knows exactly when the last transaction log ran. When you're done, right, it'll eventually say complete cutover, right? It knows how many files, how many transaction logs, it knows everything. It restored everything, but it'll be ready to do the cutover when you click that cutover, complete cutover, right? So what do you want to do when you are at that point? Well, that's it. You don't want to corrupt this database. You want to make sure that when you hit that complete cutover, your application is down. Everything cannot touch this environment, because I'm going to take a last backup, transaction log backup, and I'm going to finish this. Okay. So this is my database that is restoring in MI. And here it is. I'm going to make a change in one of the customer data, customer sales. Just a little test so that you know that it copied that last transaction into the MI environment. And you know that, right? So if a change happened to the table, I take a transaction log backup, and then that transaction log backup, it's going to be restored in the other environment, and you're set to go. Okay. I'm just showing you how it creates the other transaction log, and we're done. So any questions here? You will always have information on the last thing that got migrated, or through this migration status details.
I actually have a quick question.
Go ahead.
I know you're showing this with Azure Data Studio. Have you been playing to see what sort of extensions are available in Visual Studio Code, since that kind of seems to be the new place we're supposed to be using for things?
No, this is not
Okay.
going to be the new place.
Oh, you don't think so?
No. Everything is pointing to Arc. Everything is pointing to Arc. The hybrid cloud is going to be, I don't know if you guys remember in 2019 when Satya came with it was the beginning of the Kubernetes, and the whole infrastructure as a code world. That was the beginning, right? Or not the beginning, but the orchestration part. The goal was to build the hybrid cloud solution, because right now Arc becomes your hybrid cloud solution, where From there, you can control your SQL servers in AWS, your SQL servers in Google, your SQL servers, everything in one centralized place. So if you want to migrate, you don't want to have tools installed in all the places. You want them to go centralized in Azure and connect and assess and eventually migrate. So that's why, and I've been playing with Arc as well. But like I said, the next version of this migration, I've been doing migration for so long that I've been writing books, and you don't understand how many times this thing has changed. But at the end of the day, it's the same foundation, right? So you have an instance with files and jobs and users, and it's the same thing. It's like moving a house, right? You're going, you're grabbing all the same things, the sofa, the kitchen tools, all these things are, nothing changes. You're still going to need the same things to move. The only thing changes is the method they're using to migrate. And they're going to try to centralize like that because of their exposure to many clouds, on-prem, in the cloud, anywhere you have a managed an engine and you can have connectivity to the engine, you can bring it, because at the end of the day, it's just a method of transportation, right? So, any other questions?
Thank you for that perspective. That's really interesting.
No problem. And I could be wrong. Do not quote me. I am not the first one in line. I'm not the one to give the suggestions. But if it works the way that I see it work, because I've been working with ARC as well. I do another presentation that is called How to Implement ARC, which I would do for Tracy, of course, because she's my friend. And I'll show you guys how to enable ARC on SQL Server and the tools that we have with ARC and SQL Server. And one of them is data migration. So that's why, I'm kind of thinking that this is the future. Right. So one thing that is very important, we need to have port 443 open. Okay. That is something that it catches some people or some companies. Like, what? And it is just an outbound. So relax. We need it. It's a requirement. Okay. So this is how you set up integration runtime. Let's say you don't have a storage account. Like, let's say, you just have a VM and all your backups are going to that VM 10 terabytes drive, right? And you want to be able to do the same thing what we just did, but you want to be able to use the runtime integration, right? So this is a script that you open up and run it on that VM, and it does the same thing, but through a script, right? PowerShell. Now, log replay service, right? So I talked about log shipping, right? For those of you that are old like me, we used to use log shipping for everything when it comes to replicating, migrating, high availability solution, everything, right? It was our everything 25 years ago. And guess what? Today, I'm still doing log shipping in many clients because there's a tool for everything. And it happens to be a tool that works, right? So, but when we're in the cloud, we have something very similar, which is called log replay service. Okay, it gives you more control. It gives you, let's say, like most of my clients are very large, right? Let's say you have 2,000 databases, one of them 20, 30 terabytes, right? We just did one tiny little database. And we went through this process and backup restore. We waited the next day, everything is fine. Now, let's say you have all these databases and you're like, oh my gosh, it's going to go from one to the next, to the next, to the next. You're like, okay, this is not what I want, right? I want to have more control of my migrations. I personally, when I have very large environments, I used to do very large environments. I used to divide them into, like, first of all, what are my largest fishes here? What are my smallest fishes there? And I try to divide them into, okay, I'll take these large ones and I'm going to start them first. And then I'm going to take these tiny ones and I'm going to start them all together. And then I kind of have an idea of how long my outage or how long my migration will take, right? Then if I just start and I let it run for a whole week, listen, however you want to do it, I personally want to have more control of my migration. So that's why I use log replay service, okay? Has it been tested and everything? Yes. Only these, okay? we've tested it only on these environments. So if it's not here, I don't recommend it. It's a little temperamental. I'm not gonna lie to you. Right? So you just have to have play a little more with it so that you feel more comfortable. And it's not gooey. It's not friendly. So that's why I don't see many people diving into right away. But you learn to deal with it, right? It works. So that's why I use it. As you can see, it's scripted. We just run scripts. So once you have the right script, you're good to go. And what it is basically making sure you have the right resource group, the right managed instance name, make sure you have the right database, the right URL. It's everything just in a script. And then you just run it and that's it, right? And I mean temperamental because if you don't have like a space or something correctly, you can't really understand what the error is and you'll be wasting a lot of time. So make sure your syntax is correct. So once it starts running, you can see how you can check the status. And it's restoring. So it's restoring 8. And this is just showing you how I can go in here and make changes, just like I did with the table with DMS. And I will grab the last change. When I'm ready to do that last backup, just like we did the transaction log, then I run that command that is called last backup. Where is the command? Hold on. See that command right at the bottom that says Azure SQL log replay complete and my blah, 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 last backup name Gilda tree. That's my last transaction log backup. Once you've run that, you're done. Okay. Any questions? I know it might sound confusing, but you just have to practice it. I would not recommend, just like anything, I would not recommend doing this without any testing, validation, or experience, especially production. Right? If you are ready to do dev, it's great, you can test it. But when it comes to production migrations, it's not just this. What's behind this that you cannot see is making sure that you know exactly what's connecting to your SQL Server, making sure that you know that you're migrating either from one domain to another, making sure that you bring all the user IDs and passwords, making sure that all your jobs, your SSIS package, or all these things that are part of your environment are sanitized so that you can have a successful migration. I think of these things as open heart surgeries, depending on the criticality of these environments. It's a lot easier to do a lift and shift, where I can take an image of here and I can take and put the database on the other end, and then I can just copy, back up and restore. There's so many ways to do a restore. But when you are at this level, which is DMS and LRS, these companies are highly critical environments that cannot even waste 1 minute of downtime. So a lot of preparation needs to be done. So I'm here to help. If you have any questions or if you need any assistance, I can help you to journey to the cloud. Are we good? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Did I lose?
Yep.
Okay.
Nope, you're still here.
Okie dokie. Any question?
Nope, no questions in the chat. I don't see anybody want to come off mute and ask anything.
Well, that was a quick 41 minutes.
That happens sometimes. Your presentation goes faster sometimes than it does other times.
Yeah, I didn't want to go show you guys how I put a table and change the table and you can see the changes of the table because you already know that this is going to work. I just wanted to make sure you understood the concept of DMS and LRS.
All right. So now's your chance just to hammer on with questions in general if you want to, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to know how many of you are planning or see themselves migrating to the cloud anytime soon.
Well, we're migrating some stuff to the Azure SQL DB.
Azure
Which
SQL
is-
DB.
Yeah, which is not fun, in my opinion. To do with little downtime.
So with Azure SQL DB, you first, when you're running the Azure Data Studio, when you look at that assessment, it has to tell you that it is compatible with Azure SQL DB.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's the first step. You can use DMS to do your migration, or you can, there are multiple ways also to do the Azure Data Studio. The Azure SQL DB.
Yep. Yep.
And if you have any questions or if you see any errors, I'm here. One of the biggest problems that we see with Azure SQL DB is the fact that many companies use jobs and things that connect. And, unfortunately, these are not available through the same. So that's why many companies do MI. MI is the closest to a on-prem environment in the cloud with PaaS, platform as a service, as a solution. So it handles your backups, and handles your patching, and handles everything. And it gives you the possibility to migrate environments like this.
Jobs and cross database queries. I know one of the things I'm running into when trying to migrate up to Azure SQL DB is the fact that our users in our database are domain/username, and you can't migrate them straight up that way because they have to be username at domain.com or whatever. So, and then I've got cross database queries in some of my stored procedures, and there's other things that have to be cleaned up out of the database before it can be migrated up. So I'm having to restore it somewhere else and clean it up. I'm just at the test database phase at this point, but we're cleaning it up so that we can actually migrate it production wise, and we'll have to use transactional replication when we do it that way so that we don't have any downtime and loss of data. So yeah, so that's my fun time with Azure SQL DB. Because there's things in there that they can't get rid of in the regular environment yet, because if I get rid of it, it has to go into source control, and then it'll propagate up to production, and we're not ready for that yet.
There's a lot of that, to be honest with you. There's a lot of people that are diving into the cloud, but they're not 100% sure that they want to put their production environment there, and I don't blame them. I see this every day, and I can't really do much but to advise them to upgrade a little bit more to there so they can see the same performance or things like that.
Yep.
Ultimately, I personally recommend sometimes to get them to the cloud either through a VM solution like lift and shift, just the way it is in the cloud. So once you're there, then modernizing takes a little time, but then you'll have the time to modernize little by little.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. We have like 80 some databases on a cluster of AGs that are distributed AGs on top of it that we're trying to decouple things. So we're starting with one that's pretty small and going from there. So that's our first stab at it. I've migrated other databases up before. It's just we just started with this one, and my favorite cross database query is where it's referencing itself. I'm just like, that one I did change in source control.
Anything that you want. I mean, like I said, like I mentioned, Arc is lined up to take a big, how do you say, a role in the hybrid cloud solution. I see it in many environments, and I think it would be interesting to show you guys how to use it for SQL Server when it comes to giving you. I think it does a lot of things. I mean, the Azure cloud does, many things, but especially Arc tends to, because you can put everything together, right? All your SQL servers, you can put all your VMs, and you can kind of becomes your Azure R becomes your metadata of all your environment, especially when you have a large environment. You have so many servers you don't even know, and you spreadsheets here and spreadsheets there. I'm like, it's a pain.
Yep, Arc is a whole nother presentation probably by itself, definitely. So
Yeah, I have it for whenever you guys give me an opening.
all right, we'll keep that in mind for next year. I think we're
Awesome.
pretty full for this year, so but yeah,
Thank
definitely.
you for your time. I hope you guys learned something.